Some people speak with certainty before thinking, filling silence with confident explanations. You have seen them in meetings, conversations, and arguments that go nowhere. Their volume seems to replace understanding, and their certainty replaces reflection. It looks like arrogance, impatience, or a simple desire for attention. Yet something subtler hides beneath this familiar, irritating display. A pattern older than politeness, older than education, older than social rules. It is not about knowledge, intelligence, or even personality. It is about a survival reflex that still operates in modern conversations. Once noticed, this pattern becomes impossible to ignore everywhere. What appears loud on the outside begins quietly inside the mind, and its origin explains far more than noisy opinions. The loudest person in a discussion often appears convinced they understand everything happening around them. Their speech flows rapidly, leaving little room for interruption, reflection, or alternative perspectives to enter the space. Others slowly withdraw, not because they agree, but because participation begins to feel exhausting. This behavior is commonly labeled as arrogance, ignorance, or attention-seeking in everyday social judgment. Yet these labels describe the surface, not the mechanism driving the behavior beneath conscious awareness. The pattern is less about dominance and more about internal discomfort with uncertainty and ambiguity. Silence, for this person, does not feel neutral or calm. It feels threatening and unstable. Speaking continuously becomes a way to regulate that internal unease before it becomes noticeable to others. What looks like confidence is often a frantic attempt to maintain psychological control over the situation. Psychologist Carl Jung observed that what people overexpress often hides what they cannot comfortably face within themselves. The louder the voice, the stronger the need to prevent certain thoughts from surfacing internally. In casual conversations among friends, this appears as someone who must comment on every topic immediately. In family gatherings, it appears as a relative who turns every discussion into a long personal monologue. In workplaces, it becomes the colleague who explains ideas repeatedly, even after everyone clearly understands. This behavior does not begin as rudeness. It begins as an unconscious form of self-protection. The mind learns that speaking first reduces the risk of being exposed as unsure or uninformed. Over time, this habit becomes automatic, triggered before conscious awareness can evaluate the situation. Behavioral scientist B.F. Skinner noted that repeated relief from anxiety reinforces patterns faster than rewards ever could. Each time talking reduces inner tension, the brain strengthens the habit without the person realizing it. Eventually, the person believes they simply enjoy talking, debating, or expressing opinions frequently. They rarely notice how uncomfortable they feel when they are not the one filling the silence. Others sense the discomfort indirectly and often interpret it as ego or insensitivity. What is seen as ignorance is frequently an attempt to outrun the fear of appearing ignorant. The paradox is subtle and easily missed in everyday social interaction. This is why the behavior is easier to criticize in others than to recognize within oneself. What seems like excessive talking is often an unconscious strategy to avoid internal confrontation. And this strategy did not begin in adulthood or social settings. Its roots trace back to an earlier environment where silence carried different consequences.
If you're still watching, you probably notice things most people miss. You question behavior, you look beneath the surface. If that sounds like you, subscribe. This channel was made for minds like yours.
Long before social etiquette formed, silence in early environments often meant vulnerability and unpredictable outcomes. Children quickly learned that speaking confidently could redirect attention away from their uncertainty or fear. In many homes, the child who answered quickly avoided being questioned further or corrected harshly. Speaking became a shield that reduced the likelihood of being exposed as confused or unprepared. Over time, the brain linked rapid speech with emotional safety and reduced psychological threat. This association formed quietly, long before the person understood why they felt compelled to talk. Parents, teachers, and authority figures unintentionally reinforced this pattern through subtle reactions. The child who hesitated was corrected, while the one who spoke quickly appeared more competent. Even incorrect answers delivered confidently often received less scrutiny than quiet uncertainty. The nervous system recorded this pattern as a reliable method for maintaining social safety. Psychologist Alfred Adler noted that early feelings of inadequacy often shape lifelong compensatory behaviors. Talking excessively became one such compensation, masking internal doubts before they could surface. In classrooms, louder participation often looked like engagement, even when understanding was shallow. Peers responded to confidence, not accuracy, teaching the brain which behavior gained social acceptance. Gradually, the habit detached from its original context and followed the person into adulthood. The individual no longer remembered why silence felt uncomfortable, only that it did. Evolutionary pressures also shaped this response long before modern social structures existed. In early groups, appearing decisive could prevent being perceived as weak or uncertain. Those who projected certainty were less likely to be challenged or excluded from the group. The survival value of confident expression became encoded deeply into social behavior. This ancient wiring still operates in modern conversations without conscious awareness. What once protected status in small tribes now appears during casual workplace discussions. The brain does not distinguish between ancestral survival and modern social interaction. It simply repeats patterns that historically reduce the risk of social rejection. Neuroscientists describe this as the brain favoring familiar safety strategies over accurate reflection. The person feels compelled to speak before thinking, driven by an old emotional memory. They experience a subtle relief once they begin talking, reinforcing the cycle again. This is how a childhood adaptation quietly becomes a lifelong conversational pattern. And this pattern begins to reveal itself most clearly in everyday social relationships. This pattern becomes most visible in friendships, where conversations should feel relaxed and mutual. One friend consistently dominates discussions, steering topics back toward their opinions and interpretations. Others begin sharing less, sensing their contributions will be interrupted or redirected quickly. The loud friend rarely notices this withdrawal, interpreting silence as agreement or passive interest. In romantic relationships, this behavior appears during disagreements that never truly become dialogues. One partner explains their perspective repeatedly, while the other quietly stops trying to be heard. What looks like stubbornness is often a fear of pausing long enough to hear something unsettling. Silence in these moments feels heavier than the argument itself, so talking fills the emotional gap. Family gatherings provide another familiar stage where this pattern unfolds predictably. A relative speaks at length about politics, religion, or personal stories without noticing others disengaging. Attempts to introduce new topics are gently overridden by continued explanations and confident assertions. The speaker leaves feeling socially active, while others leave feeling socially drained. In workplaces, meetings often reveal this pattern with surprising clarity and frequency. One colleague explains obvious points in detail, preventing space for quieter, thoughtful contributions. Supervisors may mistake this for leadership, reinforcing the behavior unintentionally through subtle approval. Meanwhile, creative or reflective individuals slowly reduce participation to avoid conversational exhaustion. The loudness gradually shapes group dynamics, without anyone openly acknowledging what is happening. Social gatherings amplify this pattern when multiple people compete for conversational dominance simultaneously. Voices overlap, ideas blur, and meaningful exchange gives way to verbal performance. Psychologist Eric Fromm observed that many people speak not to communicate, but to escape inner isolation. Talking becomes a way to feel connected without risking the vulnerability of genuine listening. This is why the behavior is often noticed first in others rather than recognized personally. People feel irritated by the loudness externally while remaining unaware of similar impulses internally. The pattern hides behind everyday social norms that reward expressiveness over quiet reflection. Individuals begin associating conversational dominance with competence, influence, and social value. The quieter participants are misread as less informed, even when they understand more deeply. Over time, groups unconsciously adjust around the loudest voice without realizing the cost. What seems like harmless conversational style subtly alters how relationships function and evolve. And modern environments quietly magnify this pattern far beyond traditional social settings. Modern technology provides endless stages where speaking loudly requires little effort and gains immediate visibility. Social media rewards confident declarations far more than careful reflection or patient listening. Short posts, quick comments, and instant reactions favor speed over depth in everyday exchanges. The brain receives rapid feedback in the form of likes, replies, and attention from strangers. This feedback mimics social approval, strengthening the urge to express opinions quickly and repeatedly. Algorithms quietly prioritize bold statements, pushing nuanced voices further into the background. What once happened in small rooms now unfolds before invisible audiences numbering in thousands. The individual feels heard without experiencing the vulnerability of genuine interpersonal interaction. Talking transforms into posting, commenting, and reacting without pause for internal processing. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman described how fast thinking often overrides slower, more reflective mental processes. Modern platforms constantly encourage this fast thinking through design and social expectation. News cycles, trending topics, and viral debates create pressure to respond immediately. Silence online can feel like irrelevance, pushing people to contribute something, anything, quickly. This urgency mirrors the old survival reflex, where speaking first prevented perceived social risk. Work environments also amplify this pattern through constant meetings, messages, and collaborative tools. Employees feel pressure to contribute verbally to demonstrate engagement and value. Those who pause to think may be perceived as less involved despite deeper understanding. Cultural norms increasingly equate visibility with competence and confidence with intelligence. The louder digital presence begins to replace quieter forms of thoughtful participation. Over time, individuals lose tolerance for silence even when alone with their thoughts. Moments without stimulation feel uncomfortable, prompting constant mental or verbal activity. The nervous system becomes accustomed to continuous expression as a baseline state. This constant output leaves little room for internal reflection or emotional processing. What feels like connection gradually produces subtle mental fatigue and relational distance. People speak more than ever while feeling increasingly misunderstood and unseen. The cost remains hidden because the behavior appears socially rewarded and widely accepted. The pattern now operates not only in conversations, but across entire digital identities. And noticing this amplification creates an unsettling awareness that something deeper is occurring. This awareness points toward an internal realization that cannot be easily reversed. At some point, the pattern becomes visible not only in others, but uncomfortably within personal behavior. Moments of unnecessary explanation begin to stand out after conversations have already ended. The memory of speaking too much lingers quietly, creating a subtle sense of internal friction. People recall situations where silence would have felt more appropriate than continuous commentary. This recognition does not arrive as guilt, but as a quiet, unsettling clarity. Psychologist Carl Rogers noted that awareness often precedes change without guaranteeing it will occur. The mind begins noticing how often speech appears before genuine understanding has formed internally. Conversations replay mentally, revealing how little listening actually happened in real time. The individual sees how talking sometimes prevented deeper connection rather than creating it. This realization feels heavier because the behavior once seemed harmless and socially acceptable. There is discomfort in recognizing how often speech functioned as emotional self-protection. Silence starts to feel different when its avoidance becomes visible to conscious thought. Pauses in conversation reveal subtle anxiety that previously went unnoticed for years. The urge to fill those pauses becomes easier to observe, yet equally difficult to resist. In social settings, the person begins noticing similar patterns in multiple people simultaneously. Rooms feel louder, not because of volume, but because of constant psychological self-defense. Friends, colleagues, and relatives appear to be talking past one another rather than together. This shared pattern creates the illusion of communication while reducing genuine mutual understanding. Behavioral scientist Albert Bandura emphasized how people learn patterns by observing others unconsciously. Recognizing the pattern reveals how socially widespread and mutually reinforced it has become. The realization carries an odd tension because no one appears intentionally responsible for it. Everyone seems to be protecting themselves while unknowingly exhausting those around them. The behavior loses its appearance of confidence and reveals its underlying fragility. Speech begins to look less like knowledge and more like an attempt to manage hidden discomfort. This awareness does not immediately quiet the impulse, but it changes how it feels internally. What once felt natural now feels slightly forced, slightly transparent, slightly revealing. The mind starts sensing the difference between expression and avoidance without fully understanding the boundary. And this unresolved tension lingers quietly after conversations end, waiting to be noticed again.